Hi everyone, this is George and Lauda Leon of Sovereign Key. Just want to thank Lauda for taking this meeting on very, very short notice. The way this shot is framed is actually very fitting because it looks like I'm in a little cube, a little box, and that's pretty much how it feels here in good old Victoria, Australia, because we are going through some of the world's toughest restrictions right about now, and we're essentially under martial law. They just instituted a curfew on August 2nd. So no going out between the hours of 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. unless for certain reasons. Limited to 1 hour exercise. Only one person in the household can go shopping. That's once per day. So it's very, very interesting touching on these codes, especially knowing that who the brotherhoods are and who the brotherhoods are representing as agents of the demiurge. They are the wardens here. A particular word that police officers like to use, and it's, you have privileges here, not rights. You have privileges. And that's almost like saying that, yes, we are within a prison, we are prisoners. And as long as we are here as prisoners, then everything that we are allowed here from cradle to grave is what the wardens have allowed as privilege. And when they decide to tighten the noose, as we are seeing now, we don't even have a right to breathe freely now, according to them. I mean, and isn't it interesting? Because I was thinking about that George Floyd event, and I'll call it that for now, that the incident, where the whole aspect of it, what sticks in people's head is, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. And how shortly after are we in this predicament now that we can't breathe properly because we're muzzled whilst being masked. I'm in temporary accommodation at the moment, and they recently instituted here, we had to wear the masks inside the common areas. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, this is our living room here. This is our kitchen area. And it just didn't sit right with me, because it's like, well, hang on a minute. Why do other people in their households, they don't have the police knocking on their door telling them to wear a mask? But over here, they were like implementing that. So I approached the desk and I was curious, because I actually did notice that there were 2 nights in a row that the police attended the reception hall. And so I asked the girl at the desk, who implemented this? Was it the police that were forcing management to pass it on, or was it a managerial decision? So the report came back that the police strongly recommended to management that it be implemented, but they didn't have to do it. And so once I heard that, I wasn't too pleased about it, and I went to seek alternative accommodation, because it goes against everything that I stand for, which is freedom. Within fair bounds, freedom to breathe. I mean, we're talking about the most basic rights here, which, by the way, have been completely demonized by the media right now. Anyone who's even questioning this mask scenario, all the psychological tactics and to create bias against those who actually see through this psyop. And that's not to say that something hasn't been released. Okay, it has, but the way that they're overinflating the severity is just a warm up of the control tactics to come when post vaccine, then we're really going to be dealing with some more serious pathogens, strains. It's all going to work on agreements of entrapment, because that's how the law works. And so if a cluster of people accept the trap, then that's going to then impact the wider environment. And we know people are going to take the bait. Back to what I was saying about the masks. I was going to test things here. So once they implemented the rule, I wasn't going to go with it. And I was going to sit back and I was going to observe to see if all the other people were going to observe this new rule. Because they didn't say they were going to kick anyone out if they don't do it or anything like that. It was just the masks need to be worn. And I was so disappointed when I was just watching person after person after person after person come down masked. And I'm like, damn it. Now I'm going to look like the exception. And then it gives them the power at that point. It's much easier for them to single you out. Like, oh, so you think the rules don't apply to you? Plays on the psychology that you're outnumbered and then everyone's going to be looking at you. Just at that point, the curfews come in, essentially martial law. I mean, they've got military walking with the police here. I was approached when I was walking in the park with a friend, and I will give them credit. They treated me very respectfully, spoke very politely, but it is a psychological tactic to have the citizens observing the military with the police. It's a show of force. And you have also these tactical vehicles driving around the city now. They look more militarist. They're in darker colors. It's all playing on the psychology. It's whenever the police want to become more militant, it's there to intimidate you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so they're being softer now. But we know that's not going to last. And, you've seen the script, and without going too far ahead, this is a testing the herd mentality, testing resistance. They're collecting so much data now on citizen, or I don't even like that word, population behavior.
As well as DNA, because the test is to collect DNA. It's not about the tests.
They're taking saliva swabs. They get your DNA through the saliva, and you're essentially giving a DNA sample when that would normally be reserved for criminals. You would have to have committed a crime before they could force that out of you.
Or the enticement that we're going to pay you money to get tested. I mean, I was looking at the videos for Melbourne, and I read an article saying that they're paying people who just volunteer to get tested. Drive-through testing.
Oh, they give you a Big Mac with that as well?
They don't even give you that. Stick the swab right up there, right? It's not just like your saliva from your cheek. They do the cheek, and you go right up through your sinuses, if you can believe it. This is pure DNA genetic harvesting.
And here's what's almost comical, because here under curfew, they've pretty much shut down every business that the government has deemed non-essential.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottle shops are open.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If people don't get their booze, because they know that people are psychologically being pushed here to the edge, and people are using alcohol to cope with it. I mean, I'm watching it downstairs. Even I've had a couple of glasses to take the edge off. Nothing hard. It just shows like there's a double standard and a hypocrisy here. When did alcohol become essential? So again, it's just whatever they see fit, they do. So it's got to the point here as well that if you don't wear a mask in the supermarkets, you will not be served. So we know which direction they're going to push this. I mean, again, it's conditioning. If you do not do what we say, you cannot buy or sell.
Took a flight here, and they mandated wearing masks. So, but I can't handle it. I'm like, seriously don't understand how anybody's able to do this, because it's the most uncomfortable. You're like breathing in your CO2. You feel like you can't breathe. I was like, nah, I just can't do it. So I'm on the plane. I told them, I said, I'm not wearing it, because they were like, I wasn't wearing it. So they came and they were like, you have to put the mask on. I said, no, I can't. I said, I can't breathe. And I said, I think it's inhumane. Like the fact that there's a law now, or that there's a pretense or an intimidation that is preventing people from breathing oxygen is beyond. And I don't want to say human rights, and I don't want to use the word rights, because that implies you don't have any. That implies you're like a cattle animal, farm animal that has a right.
Yeah, that has to be classed as a right,
Right.
and not like
so I don't even
just
want to
what
say, Right. So I don't
Yeah,
even want to
natural
say
living.
right. I don't even want to say a right or a human rights. I want to say that. So I said, it's our natural sovereign being. This is what is ours. There is nothing that should ever step in there, ever, for this. And because the plane was already going, they couldn't kick me off, and I wasn't going to put it on. So they moved me to the back of the plane, and they made sure that everybody saw me, and they made sure that everybody knew that I was the one that was putting them at risk, and whatever. I didn't care. I didn't care. And then I got written up, and then I was given and provided a government agency phone number because I'm on a list, and now I have to call, and I have to go through this whole thing where I have to provide medical proof as to why I couldn't wear the mask.
Wow. So they
Then
really like run you through the ringer. Yeah.
This is my natural being. Oxygen is part of that. Okay. It's like saying that your arm is not a part of you.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, you know how the law works, right? In terms of specific establishments can essentially declare whatever they want.
Sure.
And then if you want to use what they're offering, then really they
That's
can
how
say you got to do whatever they want. I mean, they have kicked people off planes for refusing.
I had to go. I couldn't get off the plane either. They made me sit there until there was nobody left on the plane, and then they told me I could get off. Then after that, I had to meet with an official at the airport. So then
Now this is in Canada.
Yeah, in British Columbia. And then I did talk to the person because I was like, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm telling you, there's no difference than if you're walking around and telling people they can't use their legs.
The media's screaming that the sky's falling from this. And I listen to my intuition. I listen to my gut. And this is what George Carlin speaks of about critical thinking ability, and not just listening to what the talking heads say and all the alarmist reports and the alarmist figures, when people don't even know how these testing kits are manufactured nor applied, that we have to literally implode the economy, because that's what's happening now. Because this is the second implosion that's occurring right now. This is another demolition. The Twin Towers was the first demolition. This is the second demolition. Mm-hmm. And both of them were self-imposed by governments.
Precisely. And it's not about the convid. It's definitely not about that.
You call it convid?
I call it convid.
The convid. the con video. Yeah, the little video that we're in, little video game characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so when we go back to the Twin Towers, which Saturn and Jupiter, interestingly, one was bigger than the other one, but not by much. Just like twin brothers, right? There's always going to be something different. So they got it down. This is just fascinating to me. And of course, they got it down to one, them demolishing each other, essentially. And then, of course, then there's one new tower, one victor from it. But the amount of years that the Twin Towers were there prior to the purposeful act of the government to destroy them as a introductory of the real phase of power, which this all has to do with what we're going through as well, because it's all in stages, was that it was demolished only after 28 years of having been built. Well, 28 is a 1. It's a 10, and that's a 1. That's a 1-0.
1-0. Binary.
Binary. Exactly. And then you remove the 0,
quality.
And you get the 1 at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is exactly what it was foretelling and foreshadowing. That was what that was about.
All right. Well, I was going to save this information for the next video, but given that it's on topic, so people might wonder, well, hang on, why would Jupiter kill himself? But there's decodes in that, because when you realize Romeo and Juliet, Romeo is Jupiter and Juliet is Alcyone, and Jupiter kills himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's also in Scarface, where Tony Montana, who is the prime body of Jupiter, shoots Manolo in the rib section, and he refers to him as Romeo in that film. See, I just love how they're little inserts. And also Buffalo Bill, which I covered last video, and he goes, "Would you F me? I'll F me." And what he's really saying is that the satellites of Jupiter are actually going to collide with the main body.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a form of, I guess you could call it suicide, because there's going to be mass collisions with Saturn and Jupiter, but it's also going to be Jupiter's own satellites which are going to collide
Mm-hmm.
with Jupiter. Those who carry the template of Jupiter within their own being often do have a tendency to feel suicidal thoughts and actually carry it out on a more serious note. And this is something that's it should be addressed because you spoke about how all our names are coded according to what is our prime celestial planetary template influence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I can give you a few code names for Jupiter right now. Anyone that has RY in their name. So Gary, Ryan.
RYX, one of my favorite singers. RYX.
Well, he's the one who gave me the code. Is in through decoding, you know, how I've decoded bands. It's like, for example, here's another one. Alice in Chains is actually Alcyone in Chains. Where Alice in Wonderland is Alcyone in Wonderland. And it's Alcyone in Chains. And when you look at the Statue of Liberty, how we decoded that the Statue of Liberty is Alcyone. And literally,
chains.
It's got the chains at the feet.
On her feet.
Yeah. So obviously, these bands have to be linked to initiate knowledge. I'm noticing with the changing of the guard, a lot of the people in the executive power positions carry the Jupiter name codes. It's crazy. And then it just makes you think, like, is this a simulation aspect, or is it that they're put in that position of power because the architects know that they carry that template and they're meant to like carry out that charge based on their makeup?
It's more
they are controlling, you know, that it's like you'd have to have that control signature in order to implement what they're implementing.
Yeah, but it's a very sophisticated interface hologram law that is being orchestrated by Saturn and the architects. So this is what you would call mind magic manifestation in the hologram, because to try and explain how it manifests when you come in, because a part of that is hijacking you and your body. Your template is being hijacked when you get in here. And this is what a lot of the ancient arts of numerology, astrology, all of this is. Astrotheology. This is like extremely deep insides. It's an insight into the window interface of the hologram as per the fourth dimensional interface to the third. And I'm trying to explain it the best way I can, because it's a very difficult thing to explain. But this is why it looks like things are like magical. Like, why is, when you decode a person's name, you can find really the codes of what their template is and what they're here to do, and what really the principal rulerships
Yeah, and not necessarily what they're here to do, but what they're here to overcome.
Or overcome, exactly. Which is what they're here to do. Is
Because
to
we're here
overcome.
to overcome
Yeah.
the flesh
Yes.
matrix.
Yeah.
Is in whichever way you want to call it. We're in the containment of the flesh, and whatever, even the energetic body
Right.
of the aura, everything, right?
And often your life is going to simulate a narrative, and you're going to see a reflection of that narrative playing out throughout your life. I mean, you know, when you said Romeo and Juliet, I had a love of that. That was one of my favorite plays ever, Romeo and Juliet.
Star-crossed lovers.
Yeah,
How's that hidden in plain sight?
and I was Juliet every single year in high school, and literally they didn't want anybody else playing Juliet. It was so bad that people were upset because it was literally handed to me all the time to play Juliet. It's really funny. But there's absolute real 3D living narratives playing out, including the streets that we live on. Okay, so a lot of the time,
totally, yes,
you know, it looks like destiny, and like, oh my God, you're being moved to this street, and the name of that street and the numbers, what they work out to, and it's just all telling you something far deeper of what's
the
really
deepest
going on.
signature. Yeah, it's the macro signatures playing out to the micro.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that we are within the principality, the powers and principality, which is interesting, that word alone, powers and principalities. It's P and P. And we know who the two P's are, the two penises.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the powers and principalities are Jupiter and Saturn.
Yeah.
And they're the prime of the masculine bodies.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is that there are those here who are in the arts, who produce the arts, that supply the codes. They know the matrix codes. So it's like, knowing. I mean, I've always wondered, like, who was the person or people that knew how to decipher the astrology of, like, the attributes if you're born under, you know, whatever star sign. It's like, where did they get that information? Like, they obviously know.
Can I tell you?
Yeah.
So it's the macro to the micro, and literally every planetary body, every star body has manifested in the flesh. So the body has been birthed through the fleshly temple. And even the so-called archangels that came, and the fallen angels that came with the information, had the information because they did get it from the celestial realms. And they translated that to those in this dimension.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the thing is, though, is that they're supplying these codes openly for those who can eventually see through their veils. But I really feel that, it's like I said, it's an interactive simulation. So there is like a framework that we are under. However, we can override that framework, even though the feelings that you might have, you might have oppressive feelings, because I find that the people with the Saturn and the Jupiter, they tend to be more prone to anxiety, depression, trauma within their being, like a deep trauma, even a trauma that they don't fully realize why it's there. But it is there. It's in their cellular network, and they are meant to overcome that. And that's why I say we're here to overcome the world system. And it is the world system of Alcyone, Saturn, and Jupiter, the Trinity on this matrix density level.
Exactly.
Some more Jupiter name codes. So Decoded Teen Wolf and Scott was the name of the guy who played Jupiter, played by Michael J. Fox. So we know it's Scott and Michael Jupiter. Our Prime Minister here, his name is Scott Morrison. Now, Mark Morrison was the artist who sang Return of the Mac. The Return of the Mac is Return of Jupiter. And the first
Mac
scene there
Daddy.
is
Mac
the
Daddy.
jet, the Mac Daddy, yeah.
Mac Daddy.
And our state premier here, his name is Daniel Andrews. Now, Daniel LaRusso is the Karate Kid. Daniel LaRusso is playing Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. Once you figure out these codes, it gives you the answer to who's running what template. And that's how I know that these are the agents of control, just as Max as the show Get Smart put out.
Yeah, and I was going to say, both Jupiter and Saturn have been allocated because they are not the principal rulers. Again, that has to be understood. Because ultimately they're not. They're not. They've been allocated.
Mm.
So this rulership is for a limited time.
Do they know that?
Oh, they know that.
Yeah.
They know that.
Yeah, I think they do. But see, this is the conundrum. It's kind of like the hidden say that's like, yeah, we're here playing our roles.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, like, whether these individuals know about these codes. It's almost like, are they told, like, okay, yeah, you're a representative of Jupiter, and this is his role. This is what he does. You know, he's the one.
I don't think
like,
so. I don't think
they
so.
have that level of awareness.
No. The type of interface with this all is so deeply embedded into osmosis that they're just doing it almost like like unconsciously. It's just in them to do it.
Just functioning.
Yeah. It would be equivalent to just having some driving force, the force in you, that you just are compelled to do it, and it's in you.
Yeah, but given that these people in positions of power, they're part of secret societies. They're part of the brotherhoods.
Some
So
of them
I wonder,
know.
like, whether,
I
that
think
information is imparted.
The higher ups would know. I don't think you're looking
Definitely.
at tiers and tiers and tiers and tiers of like powers.
Sure.
So, each of them is responsible for some function related to this reality.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to know, except for like the higher levels are going to know how this all really works.
And often people who are part of the religious constructs have submitted and subjugated themselves to the mind power of these lords, who can work supernatural influence over your mind. They can produce what people would call, signs and wonders and miracles. And yeah, because it's all within the realm of the supernatural. Like you said, the fourth and the fifth dimensions, the three, they work all through the astral. And it can look like a genuine, like,
miracle,
super parting to serve their control.
Well, do you remember in the Old Testament there was the competition in ancient Egypt with one of the pharaohs and Moses, wasn't it?
Yeah. Which god's better?
And which god's better than my God's
more powerful
than your God? Oh yeah, I'm going to show you my God is more powerful. So, and then it all began, right? That's like probably one of the best examples.
Yeah, that is very good. Yeah, that's a great example. Whose dick is bigger, right?
Yep. Which fourth, fifth dimensional power, Saturn, Jupiter, rivalry, is bigger and better.
So it is, but that's the whole point. I mean, yeah, it does appear as a rivalry, but really,
it's not. But it does. Even though they work together, it's not because they want to necessarily. It's part of it's part of their matrix.
Well, they're both stuck.
But they're both stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, we both got to eat.
Yeah. Pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hang on.
Interesting. I'm drinking out of a plastic bottle now. I bought a glass bottle just this morning. Where'd you go?
Right here.
But I had a glass bottle on the table here,
Mm-hmm.
and when I was shifting things around, the glass bottle ended up falling onto the floor, and it smashed.
Mm-hmm.
And broken glass everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I think that was symbolic in some
Mm-hmm.
strange way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like the glass breaking, water, flooding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that just reminded me. I wanted to speak about this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we spoke about how the Twin Tower was a Saturnian fire ritual
Mm-hmm.
that was conducted in 2001, with the 21 being in the Chaldean assigned to Saturn. That's how we know it was a Saturn ritual, Saturn fire ritual. Now we're in the 22 code, as I covered, the BB codes, BB 22. We're in 2020. That's assigned to Enlil. Enlil, his symbol, water. That provided a warning for a potential water flood event to occur. And initially I said June or July, because the 6 and 7s I often saw in the codes ascribed to Saturn and Jupiter. And so I thought, okay, that's a time period to be watchful of. Obviously, we've passed that now.
Yeah.
But here's what I was guided to. So I remember me breaking down the Rambo code. And he's on the horse and he's got the arrow. Anyway, and that was assigned to the ram is Jupiter. Now, Sagittarius. The ruler of Sagittarius is Jupiter. So I'm putting this as an official alert. I've never done this before. Official alert for the Sagittarius period, for there to be either a water event, which if it falls within that period, I will say it's a ritual.
Exactly.
Though it's tough because we're still within a simulation, okay? And the architects know the simulation movements. And that's what's difficult to discern this sometimes, whether what's a ritual and what is part of the simulation and that was slated to occur anyway, and what is sort of man-made.
Right.
Now, there's been a lot of talk around the Three Gorges Dam and how unstable that is. Now, that would cause major, major damage. That would be a major, significant flood event if that gives away. What's interesting about that is that many years ago, in 2009, I came across an article and I looked for it recently. I couldn't find it. I'm going to look for it again because I want to link it if I can. There was a Maori prophecy.
Oh, I found it. I can link it to you.
Yeah, awesome. There's a Maori prophecy that speaks of the Three Gorges Dam busting, and that being one of the earliest precursor signs that when that dam breaks, that's when a lot of the other changes occur. It's kind of like from then it's cascading, like other events in the world. So, but I don't know. I do not know. I'm just looking at the information. I'm looking at the codes and I'm trying to figure things out. But I am going to put that as a red alert period for people to have preparations in place for a flood event. Now, I'll apply that to anyone near coastline. Have a plan. So, Sagittarius period. And look, I'm no master of astrology. I don't even, that's from like, what is it, from 20th of November into December, around there.
Yeah.
Regarding our videos, please go through the descriptions. If you're going to watch the videos, make sure you go into the descriptions because often there is supplementary evidence information and also corrections that have been applied in those descriptions? So,
It's November 21st to December 21st.
okay.
So element is fire, the symbol is the archer, the ruling planet is Jupiter. So yeah.
See, I didn't know
So
that.
it's
I mean,
it's fire and water, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, this was recent information to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know more about,
Mm-hmm.
that stuff than I do. But I'm also guided from very high places.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm putting that out there as an official alert. And yeah, it's interesting times, as the proverb says. Actually, wasn't that a Chinese curse? May you live in interesting times or something. But we're in interesting times.
Oh, it's always going to be this way. Always.
Mm.
And it's only just begun.
We've had people say to us in some comments, "You told us about the problems, why aren't you providing us solutions?" Now, when we tell you of the problem, and I want to say this delicately, I'm not looking to offend anybody, but it's like, you got to use your own critical thinking here. If we're telling you what the problem is, then that should actually give you the solution. You should know, okay, well, maybe if I can move away from a particular coastline, then maybe I should. Or maybe I should then make sure I have water filtration, some food storage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just don't understand where some of these comments come from. It's just like we assume that people can deduce things on their own, that if we're saying something, that we're giving you the news
Mm-hmm.
of what's to come.
Yeah, and there's
Then,
a lot of research that can be done. I mean, if you need to buy supplies, there's plenty of people that, have websites that can tell you what you need. And there's lists
sure, exactly.
made, and there's
Yeah.
it's all out there.
Yeah, I'm no, and that's the thing. I'm no sort of survivalist. We can't do everything, that in
Yeah.
that sense. Being given insights, we're sharing them, and really, like, yeah, please use your initiative,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be afraid to ask for assistance
Mm-hmm.
from the positive powers, and they are here to help. Okay, but we have to do our bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one prayer I often like to say is, help me to help myself,
Mm-hmm.
so I can help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and that's one thing I just find myself affirming quite often is help me to help
Well,
myself.
and
So
the
then,
knowledge,
yeah,
the knowledge of the information is what is going to empower you to do what you need to do, and to actually have the awareness. That's why they say knowledge is power. So that is, you're already halfway there when you have the information.
well, knowledge alone isn't power. Knowledge applied is power.
Right. So you're halfway there.
Yeah.
Because then you got to go the other halfway to do what you have to with the information.
Yeah. My prime motivation is to spiritually prepare people, because regardless, we're not in the flesh forever. Most of us have an expiry date, so to speak.
Yeah.
Once you've born into the flesh,
not all of us, though.
it's a no. Yeah, that's another conversation. But yeah, most of us are here for a temporal earthen experience, and boy, does it go quick.
Mm-hmm. Everything that's happening right now, one of the positives about this is that it's actually forcing people to start thinking existentially. So for a lot of people who don't ever go there, this is actually forcing that. So in a way, it's almost like a shocking awakening or prompting for a lot of people, because they're being forced to ask some serious questions about a lot of things that are existential about themselves, the nature of reality, life, what they thought was normal, just considering even the evaluation of what everybody took for granted, that thinking that certain things are normal when they're not, and then taking for granted things that should never be taken. So one of the things that people thought was normal was working like a ridiculous amount of time, making terrible money that you never get ahead. You're just paying bills, and you're working most of your waking hours without hardly any time off. So 1 or 2 days off a week. which doesn't give you any time for yourself. So there's this entire system that was created that was based on a farming feudal system, like literally farm animals. It's a farming feudal system of enslavement.
It's all harvesting energy.
Right? So how in the world is that normal? Well, you know what? People are actually, now they get to ask themselves that. People that were working minimum wage jobs, and that hell nightmare that is, they get to be paid now by the government, and they're asking themselves, why would I go back to that? Why would I go back to that kind of a hell life of enslavement, barely surviving? So this is pushing some extreme directions in a way that has been long overdue. And it is a dismantling of a lot of things.
Well, I'm actually glad you brought this up, because you brought up the positive aspects of what's going on right now, and there are positive aspects. We are within duality, so there is both positive and negative to everything that is happening right now. I mean, this shutdown has been a catalyst for people to reassess their whole lives, their whole function, all their decision making, everything that they've been working towards, their goals, their relationships. There's a lot of people that were in bad relationships, and because of all the distractions in the world, I mean, that was creating a buffer to basically continue living out, like facades. And now that, people have literally been forced in the same environment, it's like shit's gotten real now. And when shit gets real, and then if you're not with the right person, then it's like that, it can't stand that. It can't endure through it. And apparently the divorce rates are going through the roof now, because there's a lot of people that are in relationships for the wrong reasons. And this just seems to be human nature. Oftentimes, there's a form of dependency and usury that's going on, just human nature, and yeah, just people that aren't in things for their highest potential. It's often for material benefits, for example. So yeah, this has really forced a lot of things to come to a head now, and people just are reprioritizing. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it's meant to do. And like you said, like to not take things for granted. I mean, we've been so rigged to take so much for granted because, well, in many first and second world countries, we do have things so easily available. And now we're being taken out of our comfort zone. And I feel we are being conditioned to get out of our comfort zone because of the climate changes. Some natural, some unnatural, but because these events are going to occur, they are inevitable. That people need to start getting a thicker skin now, and they can't have it as easy as they had it, so to speak. Especially people from first world countries. It is being put through the fire psychologically. Some people are going to cope better with it than others, but I'll tell you what, if these disasters occurred without this catalyst priming them for the last, how long has it been going? 6 months to 7 months, something like that. Then they would have a much, much harder time if it would just boom. So I don't want to say that it's like all one-sided. I don't want to get into polarized thinking of calling things all good or all evil, because I know, within a duality, things are more complex. I mean, are we all good and all evil as human beings? I mean, so we're often shades of grey. It's just that tug of war sometimes, the lower mind, the higher mind. And and that's how I feel that this stage craft sometimes works as well. It's shades of grey.
Yep. I agree.
But there are agreements of entrapment that people need to be aware of also. So I don't want to, ignore that working as well, because we are here to be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Unless you're backed against the wall and need to defend yourself. But I'm all for peaceful resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Though it's ironic, the government always talks about force. We're coming out in force. We're coming out in force.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to take your guns away because we have to be the force.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want you having any force.
Yeah.
Because then we want to be able to force everything that we want. And we don't want any resistance to that.
Mm-mm.
And here's the problem, is that if you are under tyranny, and it's interesting because let's look at the word tyranny. The YR is in the word tyranny, the YR code.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I feel that anyone that has these strong Jupiter and Saturn templates with them has to be careful of going to extremities in behavior, whether it's force, whether it's control, whether it's certain urges of violence,
Mm-hmm.
which they tend to carry. They
Yeah.
have to resist the violence in them.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to, but let's just say they're not going to evolve if they don't. They always postulated, it's such a big question, the meaning of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, it's not. It's not a hard question. We need to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. We're here to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it's a more complex question. Like, okay, well, what does that involve?
Yeah.
How does one evolve? That's the more complex question.
Through the refining of fire and through a lot of, unfortunately, at this stage of duality, evolution doesn't happen if there's no resistance and if there's nothing that is gonna uproot you to test you and to test you through the fires of refinement.
Yeah.
It's not done. The nature of this species is complacent. They tend to only really change when there's no option.